Let's talk about asynchronous JavaScript. This is arguably one of the most important aspects of JavaScript. Not arguably, that's clearly one of the most important aspects of JavaScript, yeah? So JavaScript by nature is asynchronous. It's not a blocking language. That means that you can trigger an action, but JavaScript is not necessarily going to wait until that action is completed to proceed with the next instruction, yeah? So JavaScript is asynchronous. Many things may be happening in parallel. So depending on our ability to orchestrate these parallel actions, yeah, we'll be able to deal with more complex scenarios. So this is a huge world that has been evolving a lot. And I would like to show you 3 different approaches to orchestrate asynchronous code. Yeah? The classic one, based on callbacks, still very popular in Node. The promise one, which is sort of standard today. Yes, a better way of dealing with that. And finally, the most recent one, Async Await. You may have heard about that. Super sexy. It has changed my way of coding. Yeah, I've started to use it a few months ago, so that's something pretty new. All right, so let me present you a problem. Imagine I got a function called doStuff. And essentially, my doStuff function will call another function. Let me try to find the best way to present the problem. So I got another function called am I sexy? So now that function will return a boolean, yes or no, right? Or true or false, doesn't really matter. So imagine it returns true, right? Let's start with optimism this session. All right, so by default, I'm calling doStuff, and doStuff will call am I sexy? So I can get the variable sexy equals am I sexy, yeah? So now I can essentially do, let me think about that. So I can do console.log am I sexy, sexy, yeah? Something like that. So what will this function, or what will this algorithm return? Am I sexy true? Do you agree with Darius? He's right. Yeah, yep, just above my head. Am I sexy true? Yeah, that makes sense. And that's pretty easy, right? No problem at all. However, now the problem is, let me move, by the way, my face to the right-hand side. All right, so now the problem is, that exercise is fairly trivial because the am I sexy method answers immediately. But imagine that instead of hard coding the result, we have to call an external API. That happens, right? You know, when you want to check the weather of the day, you go to Google, and after a few milliseconds, you get the result. But it may take a few milliseconds if you are at home with your sexy Wi-Fi, blah, blah, blah. But if you are about to join the Jubilee line, it may take a while, right, to proceed your request. So in other words, I'm going to change the I am sexy function to simulate that it's going to take a while because it's going to perform some sort of complex calculations based on many different factors. So look, you know, in JavaScript, there is a function called setTimeout. So can anyone tell me what that setTimeout means? Correct. Waits 1,000 milliseconds, that means 1 entire second, and then after that time, you do something, yeah? All right, so can I do something like that? What will that return? So you said, Daniel, that it will it will display am I sexy, and then after 1 second it will display true? All right, that's another point of view, right? Someone thinks that it may display nothing, and after 1 second it will vomit all the details, right? Am I sexy, comma, true. Any other opinions? I wish it was that simple, but you are wrong. That will display, am I sexy, undefined. There you go. So now we are unable to deal with that request. Why? Because look at the signature of the am I sexy method. There is no return statement here. Yeah? If I return true, fine. But if I don't do that, I don't see any return statement here. There is another return statement, but that belongs to the setTimeout function. It doesn't belong to the am I sexy function. Yeah? So there is no return statement here. You may be thinking, can you do that? No, that doesn't really make sense. This is going to display something a bit weird. Am I sexy 10? Why 10? Yeah? You can ignore it. Unfortunately, that's not the way you work with JavaScript. So if that's your use case scenario, that you have to call a function and it may take a while to give you the answer back, yeah, that's a super common scenario. Actually, you are working with CodeFlix, task number 24, yeah, you'll see something like that. You want to call an API, which is your Node backend, and it may be answered after a few seconds, right? So, 3 ways of solving this problem. First of all, the classic, even though it's getting less and less popular, but still there. So the classic approach, historically speaking, what we did is, when you call the am I sexy function, you pass a callback function as the argument. So not sure if you already came across higher order functions. If not, 2 things. If you go to best workshops on the Codery platform, the higher order functions is there. It's the most popular video we've recorded in our history. Yeah? Also, there is a very sexy training module on the Codery platform to master higher order functions. This is a higher order function. Yeah? So what that means, I'm going to call the am I sexy, and then once the am I sexy function is resolved, then at that time is where I can display a message. But this code is not finished yet, of course. Can you tell me, based on that snippet, how many arguments the am I sexy function has? Wrong. According to this signature, 1. That's correct, Supriya. What type? This is the argument.
Oh, yeah, this one.
Yeah. So what type the argument is? Is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an object? Wrong. It's not an object. It's a function. That's correct, Darius. So our argument is a function. Yeah. So that means that here we can pass an argument, right? You can call it Brexit if you want, but this is not going to help you to understand the problem, right? So generally speaking, we call it callback or callback function or simply function, fn, yeah? Fn, just whatever, yeah? Let me call it callback function, because callback function means that function will be called back at some point. And when will that be? And here. After 1 second, then I want to run the callback function. So I want to execute this code. In other words, let me do something. Let me add some breakpoints. Look at if I zoom it out, hope that's still readable enough. So if I add all these breakpoints, can anyone tell me the execution order? Supriya, numbers. 14, then what? 9, all right, then what? Say it again? 3, 4, and 10. What do you think, guys? Do you agree or do you disagree with Supriya? Anyone thinks differently?
I actually agree.
So Supriya and Darius? Elena, Wesley, Daniel? All right, so when I do a job interview with a candidate, that's one of my favorite questions. That gives me, let me rephrase that. To me, it's very hard to find a better way to determine whether a candidate is a good developer or not than just doing that. It's not about, here's the algorithm, talk about it. Of course, we do that, right? But it's numbers. Either you know it or you don't know it. And in this particular case, I'm very happy to say that Supriya got the right answer, which is a bit exotic, but in a positive way. Yeah? So, well done. Yeah? You get the job, essentially, right? Or at least you haven't been discarded or you haven't been rejected, yeah? Just because of that. So you pass to the next stage. All right. So let's try to understand that flow. Look, we start on line number 9. That's pretty obvious, right? Because we, first of all, need to start calling functions. If we don't call that function, there is nothing to do. So then we'll stop on line number 9 because we're calling the do stuff function. Nice. And now is where everything starts getting a bit messy, right? Because we're calling the am I sexy function. So the next thing to run will be line number 3. Here you go. And now, once I resume the script, nothing will happen for 1000 milliseconds. And after one entire second, so you'll see the green bar disappears for one entire second. And afterwards, it will stop again here. Look, that's it. You see? After 1 second, we stop on the callback function. And now, essentially, we're saying, hey, now the control is back to the function that invoke the am I sexy, right? So we are back to that line. That means that we can now, if I hover, yeah, so we'll see in a second. Right, so look at what happened here. Even though the flow is correct, yeah, so Supriya and Wesley are right, why are we still saying am I sexy undefined? Look, you may be arguing, hey, we are passing a value here, yeah? Why the value is not captured?
It's not assigned at that point.
That's correct. That's correct. Look, that structure now is a bit odd. Yeah? We don't assign things like that anymore. So we call the am I sexy function. That's the first thing. And then the callback function will pass the value. So if we pass true, then we'll get true here. If we pass false, then we'll get false here. Yeah? So if I run it again, so let me start again. If I run it again, now that's a good point. Is it working? It's not doing anything, right? Let me try again. That happens sometimes, and that's important. I'm very happy it happened here, because it may happen on a job interview, right? So I think we talked about that a couple of times already. Google Chrome is unfortunately a bit unreliable sometimes, especially when you start adding breakpoints. Sometimes it stops working. And the way to prove my theory is, if I'm wrong, if I did something wrong, it should be consistently wrong, right? But to prove my theory, I'm going to do something. I'm going to close that tab, and this is what you may want to do if that happens in a job interview. So before you enter panic mode, you close the tab. I'm going to open incognito. You know, sometimes with Google Chrome, the extensions may be affecting. the performance of your browser. And now I'm going to open the snippet again. By the way, we already discussed how to open snippets, but if you don't remember how to do that, I'll do it again. Anywhere in Google Chrome, right-click, inspect, and now we need to select sources tab on top. You will see on the left menu, probably you will see something like that. So you need to click on the right arrow, and then you need to find something called snippets. And that will show you the local snippets you have in your system. So snippets are just JavaScript functions that you can play with for testing purposes, right? All right, so now I would like to open my snippet again, and I will run it. You see? You see the difference? Now it works. If you don't change your code, and just by restarting DevTools, the output is different, that means there was something wrong with DevTools. Yeah? Unfortunately, Chrome is becoming the new Internet Explorer, but this is something we have to deal with, right? So I'm happy that happened here, because if it happens in a job interview, hopefully you will remember how to reproduce the steps. Anyway, you see now it works, right? Am I sexy? True. Of course, if I change the argument from true to false, let's see what happened. After 1 second, pop. Am I sexy? False. What happened, guys? If I remove that line number 4, what the output will be now? Yep, Darius is right, because we are not returning any value. Now, you know, that callback function, line number 10, will that line ever run? Not at all, right? That's why it's very important to invoke the callback function. That's pretty much it, to be honest. Regarding the first method, that's the classic method, yeah? I never said that was trivial. I said that's super important. Yeah? So if you want to face a job interview with guarantees, you need to understand that. Once again, back to YouTube. Higher order functions workshop, very important. JavaScript intermediate, higher order functions, vital. Yeah? If you don't get these two things sorted, it's going to be very difficult to deal with that. Yeah? Any questions? No?
So
Yeah.
this is asynchronous, no? Is it?
Yeah, of course it's asynchronous. Yeah, of course it's asynchronous. Why it's asynchronous? Because, okay, let's do a test. I got a message, hello Wesley. Can you tell me now, Wesley, what the execution order will be? So is it 12 and then 10? Or 10 and then 12? 12, 10. You're right. You're right. Why? Because even though visually speaking, line number 10 is about line number 11, you may be thinking that that happens before. In reality, because this code is asynchronous, here you say, am I sexy? Please check my sexy score, whatever that means. But I will continue my flow. Just once you found a way to determine if I'm sexy or not, then display it. But look, you see, line number 12, and now, 1 second later, pop, yeah, we jump to line number 10. Yeah? That's why it's important to know that in JavaScript, the order is not always top to bottom. Yeah? That's very important to note. All right. Any other questions? No? Let me show you a different alternative. So even though that strategy has been working since 1995, and once again, once you start working with Node, you will notice that's still unfortunately very popular, is being quickly replaced by something called promises. Yeah? So promises is something that someone created many years ago It was 2006, I think. Yeah, because that person was tired of dealing with that code structure. Yeah, Angular, if you remember Angular JS, it was the first framework to use it. And now, because the community adopted it, it's part of the standard. So that means that if the guy who created promises should be very proud, because that technology that he made up is now part of the JavaScript standard, right? Which is fantastic. So I'm going to rewrite this function just using promises. So how a promise works. The syntax is a bit special, so you have to pay attention. All right. Look, you return, and now you type new promise. Yeah, look at the syntax, you just need to get used to it. And now, ironically, that receives a callback function. So that receives a function like that. And what can we pass here? We can pass, we don't need to pass any callback function. We can pass something called resolve. You can call it Brexit again if you want, but according to the standards, you want to call it resolve. And then what? Well, then you do your stuff, right? Set timeout. So I'm essentially mimicking what I did earlier on. So now, once I'm ready to return a value, the only thing I need to do is to call the resolve method with my value. So in regards to the am I sexy function, that's it. But now the question is, how do we link with the am I sexy function? Well, we call the function, that's first of all, and now look at the syntax. Call the function am I sexy, and then, once the function returns a value, let me repeat that, then, why then? Because the syntax is literally .then. Yeah? So I hope you agree with me, that helps on readability, right? Call the function, and then it doesn't matter if am I sexy function takes half a second, 1 second, or 1 decade, right? Well, if it takes 1 decade to resolve, we may have a problem, but that's a separate story. And then we just do whatever we need with the response, right? So for instance, so can anyone tell me what will this console log print? That's correct. That's correct, Wesley. Look, am I sexy? Call that function. We return a promise. That means that the function may take a while to resolve. But eventually, after 1 second, it will resolve. And once it resolves, we will capture whatever we return. We return true, so response equals true. Let's run it. Here we go. Yeah, am I sexy true? If I pass false, it's pretty much the same thing, right? If we wait 1 second, am I sexy false? Yeah? So that's the second approach in regards to asynchronous code, promises. Obviously, promises can get more complicated. You can chain promises, you can nest them, blah, blah, blah. You can capture errors, but I don't want to go that far. At least just to let you know that this is a very popular pattern. And you will be using promises on task number 24 of Codeflix, because you will integrate your front end with your backend. And that's pretty much it regarding promises. So do you have any questions? No? All right. So the last method, the newest, the sexiest one. If you are looking for a job, don't forget something. You are fighting with many other developers that have been learning similar things. You need to do something different. Something different. If you do the same thing as everyone else, you are not going to get the job, right? So, what can you do differently? Well, that's up to you. You can have a very nice portfolio. You can learn something that is very demanded and pretty much nobody knows. Things like modern CSS, Flex and Grid. And many companies struggle to deal with these things. So if you know these things, you get that plus. Or also what I'm going to talk about now, Async Await. That's the newest approach towards dealing with asynchronous code. This is supported both in the front end and in the back end. So I'm now going to rewrite that snippet using Async Await. The syntax is a bit special once again, but once you get used to it, it's very easy. Actually, I'm going to leave the AmISexy function as it is. So Async Await still plays with promises, but I'm going to rewrite that line. So I will leave it here for reference purposes. I'll comment it out. And you will see in a second how simpler the code gets using Async Await. First of all, if you want to use Async Await, you need to add the async prefix to your function. That's the way you tell JavaScript, hey, I'm going to do something very sexy here, so be ready. This is going to be hot, right? And now, look, I can create a variable. And look at the syntax. Sexy equals await am I sexy. Sexy. And that's it. This code is equivalent to that code. Of course, if we want to add a console log, yeah, let's add a console log. Console.log am I sexy. I hope you agree with me that code is much easier to read than this code. Yeah? Async Await. Let's see if it works. Here you go. It does work. You see, after 1 second, if I pass through, yeah, here you go. If I press true, it will return true. Right? So that's the best way possible of orchestrating your asynchronous code. Because you don't have to deal with callbacks, you don't have to deal with the .then. Yeah?
But you're mixing the two up here, promises and async await.
You need a mix of both, yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, generally speaking, you create a function once, but then you may invoke the function multiple times. So even though that's true that this bit is still special, at the end of the day, if we call that function AmISexy 20 times from our source code, every time we invoke it, you see how much we are simplifying our business logic. That's the beautifulness about Async Await. So if you want a personal advice, I will start using Async Await now every time you have to deal with asynchronous code. Just make sure you have a recent version of Node.js, because Node.js introduced it, I think, on version number 10 or something like that. Any questions?
You can still take the top bit with the callback function as well, where it has to be a promise.
That has to be a promise. So await means that it expects that function to return a promise. And it will wait until the promise is resolved. So this is actually blocking. If I add something else on line number 12, for instance, so can you, all right, now I cannot add a breakpoint. You see, this thing happens as well. So why the hell I cannot add a breakpoint on line number 12? It is completely pointless, right? But anyway, you can just trust me. I will be the breakpoint man. So which line do you think will run earlier? Line number 11 or line number 12?
First one, but
Yeah, first one. Which one? 12. So you think Darius 12 will run first and then 11?
I think 11 or
Wesley is right. Await will block everything. Well, not everything, but will essentially stop here. So nothing else will happen until the AmIsexy function is executed. Let's run it. You see? AmIsexy first, and then hello guys. The beauty. Yeah?
Oh, that's right. You could be running something else.
Yeah, of course. You can make another function. It's not blocking your laptop. It's not blocking the Wi-Fi of your community, right?
Just within that same.
Within that function. So that function will be blocked. But the beautiful thing is, if you don't know the details of that AmIsexy method, the code is very readable because it's sequential. Do you remember before the example I showed you where line number 12, hello Wesley, happened before line number 10? That was a bit confusing, right? But in this particular case, our flow follows a sequential / natural / human / predictable order, top to bottom. Just make sure you add the await prefix, because if you don't add the await prefix, our function is not going to wait for anything. So that's not going to work as expected. Any questions, guys? No? All good? You are likely to get a lot of points on a job interview if you prove you know these things, yeah? So now it's up to you. It depends on how quickly you want to make 1,200 a day. And based on that, that's it from my side. So thank you for